please explain what divination is?
Divination. Uh, I'm afraid I'm not English. English is not my first language. I learned it, but I will try using my concepts, the concept of my language. Divination would mean take from the visible to serve the invisible, and take from the invisible to serve the visible. Meaning, know what is needed in the invisible from the visible, and whatever is needed in the visible from the invisible. Now, once we speak about divination, we're speaking about being in a domain or in a system that does not apply to only the three-dimensional reality, but a system that applies to two realities. Meaning like you have to be in a dualistic position. Dualistic position between the material world and the non-material world, and know how to function and communicate between the two worlds. Right? So there's a hierarchy. There's a hierarchy. And it's not even given to anyone to do divination. Because I went through the rite of passage, does not mean that I'm a priest, we can do divination. Because within the rite of passage and within the concept of priesthood, there are branches of priesthood. And there's a priest that is like a researcher priest. There's a priest that is like a discoverer priest. There's a priest that's like an execution priest. There's a priest that's like a healing priest. So there's many dimensions, many branches in even priesthood or shamanism. There's many branches within it. So depending on which one you specialize, then you end up, just focusing on it and then growing on it. Meaning, if I'm a researcher priest, I'm allowed to be doing divination. Meaning, I'm allowed to be a person who can demand to have access to the invisible forces and then communicate, because I'm a researcher. I'm working between, my research is not in the lab like the scientists, but my research is more like what can we do, what can we get from here to serve you, what can you get from there to serve here, and all of that. So in the divination, the levels are big, because we have the hierarchy that is like, it goes from what we call like the creator gods. We have to go from the creator gods to the gods that are created. Okay? And then from the creator gods to the gods that are created, human don't have access. Human being. We don't have access to the creator gods. We don't have access to the gods that are created. But we start having access to them only when we're able to go through our ancestors. Those that are like us and made us, but somehow they are detached from their bodies and they die, they transition. So through my ancestor is closer to those creation realities. Then through your ancestor you go to them, and then your ancestor has a way of manifesting your desire and all of that. So it's almost like a system that has to depend on a lineage. Because if my father did not do divination, it's almost impossible for me to do divination. Because I have to depend on him to be able to have access to the realities that, I need to have access to be able to serve you. Now, people confuse, intuition, instinct with divination. Because you have the tools in front of you, and then you learn how to use those tools, does not mean that you know what you're doing, because, or doesn't mean that the person know what they're doing. They're just using their intuition or their instinct to be telling you what they think, to be telling you what it is, and all of that. But divination in this temple doesn't work like that. So it has to go from, from your ancestor who did it before you, to the powers of the creation, or the powers that have been created. So let's take this example, right? Let's talk about healing. And for instance, talk about cancer, right? That's the problem of the whole world right now. So the priesthood, even though the modern system is now asking indigenous people to, focus and try to find a solution, a remedy for cancer, the traditional people, we are smart enough to know, like, this is something that we have to start thinking about, so that by the time it comes to at our gates, it comes to our houses, we know what to do ahead of time. So yeah, we started focusing on learning how to do that, right? But it's not going to be possible for me to stand in the forest or in the savannah and talk to the plants, because traditional healing use plants only. So it's not going to be possible for me to do that if I'm not able to invoke the spirits of my ancestors who practice healing, who dealt with nature before me. It has to go through that system. Now, once they come, then we are in the situation of, three-dimensional communication, which is, I want to know what can we do to solve this problem that's plaguing humanity now. And ancestors also will have to talk to the spirit, because we look at every plant as a dimension. Every tree that we see is like a dimension. It's like the dwelling of some power, because human beings don't create plants. We don't create them. We just plant the seed and then they become one day a tree. Sometimes some of the plants, the trees, we are not the one planting them, they just grow. So that's a divine creation, meaning that's something that the powers created, right? So we follow that. Mountains, human beings don't build mountains. That's the powers that were created. And then they end up becoming the dwelling of certain realities. So we approach them. So this is where, if it's not very well explained to a believer, a religious believer, the person would think that, it's evil. But it's not evil. We're just acknowledging the power, the divine, within the creation.
How often do you connect with your father now?
Even if I have the possibility to connect with him right now, I would do that. And for me to be able to, for my body to be able to be the vessel for him to talk with you, yeah, I would do that. We're talking about high techniques, higher techniques of spirituality over here. We're not talking about just like jokes and all of that. We're talking about higher techniques. In the temples, in our communities back home in Africa, that's what you will see. Higher techniques. People getting to go through their ancestors to be able to do whatever needs to be done.